Eventers. I hope you guys are having a good day. God, I've been seeing a lot of videos about going to World War III, but that's not what this talk is about. By the way, it was like 110 degrees here today, and it's still like 108 right now. It is a scorcher here in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you're in Phoenix, man, stay inside. Walk at a different time than this. Guys, this gentleman here, his name is David Serkin of Alberta, Canada. This guy beat cancer. Isn't that a blessing? What a lucky guy. He's retired now. He wanted to take his wife to Hawaii. So he went ahead and played the lottery game there in Canada, the Lotto, if you will. And it's a game where you pick 6 out of 49 numbers, and he ended up winning $500,000 and was able to take his wife to Hawaii. Now, I don't know what's better, beating cancer or winning the lottery. I would imagine beating the cancer probably is better, right? But I think we can all agree if you win both, that's really great. But it gets better, guys. 3 months later, he won another $1 million prize, once again choosing 6 numbers out of 49. So let's add this up. He's beat cancer once, and he's beat the lotto twice. But then on May 3rd of this year, the guy won a third time, $500,000 in the lotto game there in Canada again. Now, I've got one more tidbit to this. Number one, you're thinking this guy must be the luckiest guy ever. I think it would have been luckier if he would have won it when he was still working. He won all these while he was retired, but about 10 years before he was diagnosed with cancer, he won a $250,000 lotto game there in Canada again. So this guy has actually won the lotto 4 times. Now, obviously, that's a story in itself. But let me ask you guys a question. If you had to prove that time travel existed, wasn't going to be invented in the future, but already existed, one of the best ways you could try to prove it would be with a guy like this David Serkin character. Number one, if you were a time traveler, one of the best things you could do if you wanted to earn money was you could play the lotto if you already knew the winning numbers in advance. And he could pick lotteries that he knew nobody was going to win, so he didn't feel like he was cheating anybody. In other words, you guys are thinking, Jesse, he is not a time traveler. He's just a guy that got lucky. But every single time he won, his odds were about 1 in 30 million. That's impossible to win once, let alone 4 times. And this guy has won 3 times in just the past year or so. How crazy is that? Here's another crazy thing. This isn't the first time I've heard of somebody winning the lottery multiple times. So let's say you take the alien out of it, right? Let's say he's not an alien. Let's say he's not a time traveler. We can throw him in the category of lucky. But at what point do you have to say this guy might just be the luckiest person that ever lived? It doesn't get any luckier than that. So I want to know your guys' thoughts. I had my mom has a friend who says she won $1 million lottery up in Washington State in the early 1990s. But we think she's fibbing, because when you ask her questions about it, she makes it sound like, oh, well, I decided not to take the money. And it's like nobody that wins the lottery decides not to take the money. So we think she might have been just, telling tall tales, so to speak. But you want to know something? I've had a handful of people that I've met throughout my life that have been these people that tell tall tales. I'd be willing to bet you guys have met a couple as well. Just meeting these people, if you can get over the fact that more than likely they're telling you a fib, that they're lying, that they're just talking, they're bullshitting out of their mouth, right? if you can get over that, they're actually a real treasure to have around, from the standpoint of most of their stories are completely harmless, and almost all of their stories are very fun and entertaining. I had one guy once, his name was James. I'll leave his last name out of this, even though it's a pretty common name. But he used to tell us stories, and it would always be based on whatever me and my other coworkers were talking about. If we were talking about a field goal kicker at the game the previous week, he would tell us a story about how he knew a high school kicker that could kick a 60-yard field goal. You know, I mean, at the time, it was hard for college kickers to even kick a 50-yard field goal, but he would tell us about the high school kicker that could kick a 60-yard field goal. We would talk about the sprints and how certain people can run 100 meters in under 10 seconds. And he would tell us about somebody he knew on his high school team that could run under 10 seconds. It was like no matter what we were talking about, James always had somebody in his past that he could pull up information on the fly and regurgitate it to us. And it got to the point of ridiculousness. You would talk about an actor in a movie, and then he would swear up and down that he knew that person's cousin or he knew that person's mom. And I'm laughing and giggling because James must have given me and my buddy Don, who was my coworker at the time, he must have given us probably dozens upon dozens of hours where we just had conversations and laughed with regards to his storytelling. I had another friend named Chris. You know, keep in mind, there's multiple friends in my life named Chris throughout the years. But this Chris guy was one of those guys where if you got a new surround system for your home, you know, oh man, too bad you didn't get the one I have. You ever met a friend like that? They one up everything you do. Yeah, I got this new car stereo as a gift in my vehicle. Oh my God. You should have had them got you the one that I have. Check this out. And he basically would one up me or whoever he was talking to all of the time. Oh my God, I had the best pineapple upside down cake. Oh my God, that's nothing, you know? So some people look at them and they say, get away from me. I don't want to talk to people that lie. And then there's people like me, and I say, you know what? This guy is going to be somebody that I can tell and talk about when I'm at the break room at jobs for the rest of my life. See, that's how I look at everybody that crosses my path. Have I met really funny people? Of course we all have. Have I met really abrasive, like borderline bullies in life? Yeah, again, we all have. But the most fun, charming characters to talk about are these people that tell tall tales. And I'd be willing to bet that this guy, David Serkin, probably has multitudes of friends that he's met at church and at the bingo game and at the card game, right? He's probably met all these friends, and they probably tell their friends about him. And I bet you their friends think, oh, this guy's telling tall tales. He does not know somebody that's won the lottery 4 times. But in this guy's case, it's a true story. I got another one for you. Darren Burfitt. This guy lives somewhere in Europe. He was out with his little boy driving in his vehicle, and his son goes, hey, can you stop and get me a bag of like potato chips? I'm kind of craving. Anyway, David didn't want to stop and buy him a brand new bag, and he knew that he had a half-eaten bag there in his console. So he opens up the console, gives his son the half-eaten bag of chips, but right next to the bag, he noticed that he also had a handful of old, wrinkled up lottery tickets. They were so crinkled and wrinkled up that they couldn't be scanned. So what he did was he took those lottery tickets home inside. They were in his car for 4 months. And his wife and family would joke with him that, hey, on the news, they just said that nobody has claimed the $1 million prize. Why don't you check all those lottery tickets you have in your car? So he ends up uncrinkling the tickets, checks them, and lo and behold, he's the $1 million winner. Now here's an interesting thought. Every year there's probably a handful of lottery winners where the winner never comes forward. They're probably pack rats and people that are a little bit messy and untidy, just like this Darren Burfitt guy, and they probably have these lottery tickets stuck in between the cushions of their couch, sitting in their desk drawer, right, for the last 6 months, just sitting there wasting space. And they probably don't even realize that they've already won hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Now, there's one other little tidbit about this story that I thought was super interesting. Darren Burfitt, because he has such a messy vehicle, he had a bad habit of never locking up his car. So it said it kind of blew him away that he won with a lottery ticket that was stuck in his vehicle for 4 months, mind you, in a car that he never bothered locking. That kind of tells me that wherever he lives, it's probably a pretty decent part of, town wherever he lives throughout Europe. Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually live in a world here in the US at least, where you could safely keep your doors unlocked? I remember people would say stories about how in the 50s and 40s and stuff, that people would do that very thing. Heck, some of you probably have stories. You remember your first vehicle? Would you leave the car keys in the ignition? Because believe it or not, kids, some people did that. I think it would be awesome if we could go back to those times, but I think you'd have to be a fool to do it. I mean, how would you explain that to the cops? Hey, someone stole my car. Is there broken glass? Is there sign of a break-in? No, not exactly. Are your keys missing? Well, I don't have them, but they're not exactly missing. What do you mean, Bob? What happened? Well, I kept them in the ignition of the car and I didn't keep the car locked. Now, back in the day, it was one of those things where if you knew everybody in the neighborhood you lived in and nobody was a thief, you could do that safely. And it probably was pretty nice, right? You never had to look for your keys. It's probably to this day part of the reason that people misplace and lose their keys. There's probably a little bit of something or another in people's DNAs where they just don't like keeping track of their keys. And it would be really nice if you could keep your keys in your car where it belongs. But I wouldn't do it, would you? And no neighborhood is safe. You can live in a bad neighborhood or a well-to-do neighborhood. Cars get stolen from everywhere. And I don't know about you, but my car has a lot of value to me. Even though I work from home, I still like going to the gym. I like visiting with family members. Today, by the way, happy Father's Day. Today I went down and, my daughter and my son-in-law paid for my breakfast. One of those perks of being a dad and a grandpa. And then I told you yesterday I went to Black Bear Diner and some complete stranger purchased my breakfast for me. Sometimes you feel like the universe does pay you back. The morning before I went and got that breakfast given to me, somebody sent me a walking t-shirt. It's now one of my favorite t-shirts. You might have seen me wear it. There's these little positive perks that come out of being a decent person and not being so foul, I think there's a lot of people that just kind of go about and they're kind of rough and abrasive and foul. And I think people can see them from a mile away. And I think if I came across as just an absolute jerk, I don't think a complete stranger would have purchased my meal for me. And I can't tell you how that just completely made my day. Absolutely made my day. We don't keep track of all the stats. That scared the shit out of me. We don't keep track of all of our stats. Could you imagine if you went to bed one night and you had a dream and it was simply just a replay of all the nice things that friends and family members and even complete strangers did for you? I bet you if you could see that in your dreams at night, even just once a year or once every couple of years, I bet it would make most of us feel really appreciative of what we do have. I've had a lot of people through my life do a lot of nice things for me. Now, if you ask me on a bad day, I won't remember any of those things. I'll tell you a lot of stories about how no one cares, no one gives a shit, right? But that wouldn't be really true. On another note, I've really never had too many people do bad by me. I got mugged once when I was like 17 or 18. I got mugged by a gang member, but it was part of the APG gang, and that stood for Asian Pride Group. So I'm one of the few guys in the country that's been mugged by an Asian. Or at least I think I am. But even that is one of those things that I can talk about I can talk about that with my workmates and my friends, in the cooler room at our break. There's a lot of things that we look at, and they make up who we are in this world. I think I'm against crime not because I've been a victim of it so much, but because I see others that are the victims, and I feel for them. I see others that have had successes, and I don't think, oh my God, I feel really happy for this Serkin guy in Canada. My brain goes immediately to, is he an alien? Is he a time traveler? Or does he have a way to scam the system? Because that's how my brain thinks. How do you win something that is so challenging? Is it because God loves you and the world is just, your oyster? No, it's because you found a way to scam the system somehow. And I want to know how, Mr. Serkin. And wouldn't that be a great movie if on his deathbed, he actually told you how he managed to steal money in the lotto? That would be a great book. And that would be a great movie, and I would be the first to buy a ticket. By the way, they're coming out with 28 years later. I'm trying to talk my daughter and son-in-law into watching that movie with me next weekend. If you're thinking about watching it too, let me know down below. Have a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow. Keep walking.